There will be times when you're creating applications that you'll want to get data from a database, or you'll most likely want to use an API or a backend of some kind that you'll want to send HTTP requests to. In Angular, this can be done using the HttpClient module, which allows us to send requests and receive responses to and from web services. We're going to be using the JSON placeholder as our backend to learn how to use the HTTP client in Angular to send and receive requests. First thing, we're going to need to import the HTTP client module to the imports array of our module in app.module.ts. Now we can go ahead and use it in any of our components or services provided in this module. So let's go to our app component.ts, and right at the top, we're going to go ahead and import the HTTP client, and that's going to be from Angular Common HTTP. Then we'll inject it into our app component like we did our service and call it HTTP. So down in our ng on init method, we'll go ahead and send a GET request to the JSON placeholder API using the HTTP client. So we'll say this.http.get, and that's going to take two parameters. One is the URL string, and the other is an optional options object. Now, the thing that this method returns is actually an observable, so alone this will not do anything. We'll have to subscribe to it. So we subscribe and get the response back, and even though observables can emit more than one value, HTTP client will only respond with one value. For now, we're just console.log that value. And if we go back to our application and we look inside the console, you'll see that we have an array of 100 posts from our JSON.placeholder that have properties user ID, title, and body. Say we want to manipulate the data after the request and change it to only console.log just the titles. Well, if we want to try to map over the response, we'll see an error that says that map is not a property of the object. And that means that our HTTP GET method actually expects an observable of type object. Well, we can set this type of data we want from the GET request by putting it in brackets right here. And that's going to be an object of type ID and user ID and body and title. And that's going to be an array. So now you can see that our error went away when it came to the map. So now if I say map over the titles, that'll work perfectly. But as you can see, this is getting a little long, and what if our post had more than these four properties? What we can do instead in TypeScript is make a class or an interface with these properties and use this type instead. So right here at the top, we're going to go ahead and create an interface called post with these properties. And now I can use that down in our get method, and everything looks nice and happy. So now we're going to go ahead and make a variable called post in our app component class, and that's going to be of type post array, and it's going to be equal to an array of nothing at the beginning. And we're going to go ahead and after this response is done, we're going to make that equal to the response. And then in our app component.html file, we're going to loop over it using the ng-for directive. So let's take all this away. And inside our container, we're going to have a row. And inside that row, we're going to have a div with the class of column, S12, and M6. And we're going to loop over the post. And inside there, we're going to have a card with a class of blue and darken -2. And then the card content with white text. Then the card title. And this is where our post title is going to be, along with our post ID. Then after that, we're going to have our post body. And then another paragraph, which is right aligned with the user ID. And we're going to go ahead and separate this post ID and the title like that. So now if we go back to our application, you'll see that we have our 100 posts with the body and the title and the IDs.